In this video, we're going to talk about whether or not to ship your van to Europe or fly to Europe and buy one here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Freely Roaming. My name is Dan.
I'm Marlene.
We got a lot of questions from people about why we shipped our van from the United States to Europe instead of buying one here. So it's kind of a complicated, well, maybe not complicated, but there's multiple reasons as to why we did it. And some of those reasons we weren't completely sure whether or not it was valid or not until we came here. So we thought we wanted to make a video sort of explain the pros and cons of doing it either way. Since we've been here for about a year and a half now, we can actually see some pros of flying here to buy one, but we also want to share with you the cons.
Because we've been here for a year and a half, we also see it from a different angle where I'm glad we shipped ours over versus having to deal with European rules.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Because some of the pros of shipping our van here that we know now were actually things that we didn't realize were pros before we came here and spent some time. So let me get into, just some of the basic sort of reasons why or why not that we decided to ship here.
So let's break it down into shipping a ready-made US vehicle versus buying a European vehicle.
Right, so when we say ready-made, what we mean is buying something in the US that's already an RV. So you would buy like a Class C or a Class B. We're gonna avoid talking about travel trailers and fifth wheels for this particular situation, just because we sort of recommend against bringing any towables here in general. Mostly because from what we understand, what is legal to tow in the US is completely illegal to tow on the streets of Europe here. So if you're thinking about towing something, we don't have any actual experience or information, but what we do know is that it's complicated and difficult, and it's probably not worth the effort to actually doing it. We have some friends that have bought vintage Airstreams and have shipped them over here, but in order for them to actually use it here, they had to go through a real complicated and expensive conversion process to make it road legal. So we know that if you're just gonna be here for a short amount of time, meaning anywhere between 6 months to a couple of years, and then you're gonna ship your vehicle back, travel trailers and fifth wheels are not the way to go. So let's talk specifically about RVs and motorhomes and why you may want to ship one here versus coming here to buy one. RVs built in the US, generally speaking, are made for the US market, and that means that it's built to utilize the infrastructure that are in the US and Canada and basically North America. It's set up to use those facilities. What we didn't really know until we came here is that all the plumbing fixtures are different. A lot of you guys already know, if not most of you guys already know, that here in Europe, for the most part, they use the metric system. In the US, we use mostly the imperial system, with some stuff being in metric. So even within each system, there's fine threads and coarse threads. So even like a regular garden hose, there's a bug right here. So even like a regular garden hose is not widely available or compatible if you want to fill up water, for example. So that goes along with all the other utilities as well. Electricity, obviously, is going to be different. European AC electricity is 220 volts or 240 volts. In the United States, we have 110 or 120. So you can't just plug in your RV to shore power on a European plug here. You'll fry your system entirely. And also the other type of hookup that you may want to consider is just the gray water and black water facilities. You don't really have a gray black water dumping station the same way in Europe that you have in the United States. So for the most part, all US RVs have either like a 3-inch or a 4-inch dump valve that you connect what we call a stinky slinky to. So when the water comes out, it just goes through the hose directly into the sewer system. Here, the gray water dumping station is actually just like a grate on the bottom with a gutter. And what most people do is they drive up to it and then they open their gray valve and water just comes out and it drains in. So for that situation, you can actually use any sort of US RV gray water. You just open it up and let it drain out, and then use a hose to kind of wash off, any particles and stuff.
But not the black tank.
The black tank is the problem. For the most part, people here, I would say 95+% of all campers have cassette toilets. And they hold, generally speaking, about 5 gallons of black water, and some of them are even smaller. So the cassette toilets are set up so that you take it out of your RV and then you actually bring it by hand to a black water dump area, and then you dump it into that. And they can basically be shaped like a toilet, and that's mostly because like black water dumping is not widely available. So you want to go to different countries, because European countries are so different from one to another. I think they decided to go with this cassette toilet system so that when people go to different countries that don't have what they have at home, it could be widely adaptable. But for US RV, where you have a black water valve that comes out and you have anywhere from 20 to 50 gallons of black water to empty at a time, that could be a real problem. The other consideration for a US RV versus a European RV is that US RVs, generally speaking, are going to be a little bit bigger. Now, in the recent years, there's a trend towards smaller RVs, which is great. And I think a lot of major US manufacturers are now starting to build these high roof van based, like Sprinters, Transits, or ProMaster base RVs. And that's very, very much what the majority of the European market is like. So for the most part, people have Class B or Class B plus is what we call in the US RVs out here. The difference between the Class B is the exact same size as the van exterior, and a Class B plus for the most part is built on a van, except they would have a fiberglass mold that goes outside to make the back of the van a little bit bigger. That's the kind of stuff you see here in Europe a lot. In some cases, you see some Class C's and Class A's. Class C's having the cab over sleeping quarter, and then Class A's are just, your larger motorhome bus size things. And that's going to be on the very, very, very top end of the size. In Europe, you can have these really relatively big RVs, but you're going to be very limited in places that you can go.
And I think you really have to plan ahead on your routes. You can't just like willy-nilly drive and follow Google Maps.
If you want to go to like old towns or maybe smaller villages that are remote, you're gonna have to park on the outskirts and then either drive in or driving with a different car, which for the most part people don't really tow a second car behind their RV. They will carry a lot of bikes. Lately we've seen a lot of electric bikes that have been really popular. People will tow scooters, mopeds, and motorcycles, but you don't really see a lot of people towing full cars behind there. Just, for the same reason why that you want a smaller thing, because it's not really practical.
And even the campgrounds can't support another car in the parking spot. It's just like you put up a video, link below or above or wherever, but you can see a typical. I'll
put the link right here of the video we uploaded, which is I think a few videos ago, of a typical campground that we stayed at outside of a city, and this is outside of Barcelona, Spain. You can just see the size of what this campsite is like. There's no way you'd be able to pull a giant fifth wheel or a big Class A. I think there were 2 people that were towing a small trailer behind it, and usually the little trailers they have would have a motorcycle inside. I don't think we've seen hardly anybody towing a full car behind there. When you want to ship your car to a foreign country, depending on who your car or who you're shipping with and which bank lends you the money to buy the vehicle, if you have a loan on it, it can be tricky to get approval to ship that car out of the country. So Marlene dealt with all of the shipping situation that we had to go through to get our van over here. So we'll get into that a little bit more once we get into the shipping our car aspect to it. But you want to talk to your lender basically, because they actually hold the title, and the title is in their name while you're making payments. So you want to make sure that you talk to them while you're dealing with your shipper to bring your car to a foreign country to make sure that it's allowed.
Another thing that's important to consider is fuel economy, right? Because everything in European gas and gas prices and diesel prices are a lot higher than in the US. So we were thinking about shipping over our Ford F-250, which had terrible gas mileage. It was like 11 miles per gallon. And we're really happy we switched to the van that gets closer to 18 or so.
Yeah, we get about 18 on a flat straight highway, and if it's a lot of up and down, we get about 16 or so on the highway. And it's 6 inches narrower also, so between the narrower sides, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 6 inches actually makes a huge difference for us. Some places we didn't have 6 inches to spare. So between the size, the width, most specifically the width is a problem. Height can be a problem, but as long as you're careful and you know exactly how high you are, so you don't go under bridges or underpasses that have a height restriction, then you're fine. In a lot of cities too, they will want to discourage large vehicles from entering by building like a little metal arch so that you can't go in. Knowing how tall you are, anytime you come across one of those, you'll know if it's safe or not for your car to go under.
So everything's labeled. It's never a
Everything's
mystery.
labeled in meters.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, we are a 4-wheel drive Sprinter with solar panels, roof rack, awning, and a few
Surfboards.
things on the roof, but we know that we are under 3 meters tall. So anytime it's over 3 meters, we don't go. And length can be an issue, but I would say of all the restrictions, length is the least problematic. So really want to consider your width, your height, and then your length. So the next thing you want to think about when you bring your own vehicle over here is insurance. This ties into whether or not you have a loan on the vehicle or not. Some lenders won't let you bring it out of the country, so in that case, it's a moot point. But if they do let you out of the country, they may require you to have full coverage while you're outside. So that's going to be quite expensive, because a lot of the times to get full coverage when you're outside of the country, you have to keep your insurance coverage within the country. So you may be paying double there for the time that you're out. And for us, we use a company called tourinsure.de. It's a German company, but they do have an office in the US that you can talk to somebody there that speaks English. They will offer you liability insurance. In Europe, it's called third-party green card insurance. That's the minimal requirement for you to drive around Europe. You have to have green card insurance, and they check at all the border crossings. Depending on where your car is registered, the green card insurance will cover either some of the countries or all of the countries or any of the above. These green cards have little check boxes on them that says which countries that they're covered. So ours actually only cover countries within the European Union. So anytime when we go to a country that's not, we have to buy additional third-party insurance at the border in order for us to be legal while we're there. So cost being the case, whether you have a loan or you buy it outright, you may also want to consider whether or not you buy a new vehicle or an old vehicle. Old vehicles are great because you can buy them for a really good price, but the problem you have to really consider is whether or not you're competent in making your own repairs and whether or not you can find the parts that you need when you do have a breakdown. So for us, we switched to a Mercedes Sprinter. We actually bought a new one because we want breakdowns to be a bare minimum for us because we rather focus our time and effort on traveling and exploring. So we opted to buy a brand new Sprinter. And because that it's a European vehicle, we were able to get service done here by licensed technicians. So we didn't have to worry too much about that. Had we brought our F-250 Ford truck over here, we would have had a lot of trouble finding parts for it. So if you were to bring your own car here that's rare, it would be really cool because it's something that people here don't really see and you'll get a lot of attention. But just be aware that simple things like oil changes, air filter changes, all the little parts all the consumables, you may want to stock up on those before you ship out. And bring an old car here, obviously the same thing applies. In that case, you probably want to stock up on even more parts. And lastly, when it comes to compatibility of the parts here, this goes with a ready-made RV from the US as well as a self-made RV. If you use any propane appliances, most likely you're gonna be here with a US propane bottle or from wherever country outside of the European Union that you're from. One of the big challenges that we have is getting the right adapters to refill our propane bottles. So we're on our way to Morocco in the next week or so, and we're probably a little less than half full on our 11-pound propane tank. So far, we've been pretty lucky in finding propane refill places that will fill it for us with their own adapters. Namely, we're able to do it twice in Croatia, we were able to do it once in Greece, and we're able to do another time in Romania. So far in Spain, we've not actually tried yet, but we're gonna try to go to a couple places between here and when we take the ferry to Morocco to see if we can get it refilled. So basically in Europe, every country has its own standard of propane adapters, and from country to country, you can have problems getting it filled if you don't have the right adapters. And also some countries don't fill bottles, they only exchange. So what we've noticed with a lot of European people, when they go from France to Spain or from Spain to Portugal, they even have trouble exchanging tanks. And sometimes they're saying, okay, I'm leaving Portugal now, I got this extra tank, does anybody want it? So for us, it's not really an option because we have a designated space that we built for our propane bottle, and it has to be the right size with the right regulator for it to work for us. So that's a consideration you want to have. If you have propane on board, whether for cooking or for heat, or maybe even for your refrigerator, consider that finding places to refill your propane bottle can be a challenge. So with that said, when it comes to appliances, I would recommend using a DC compressor refrigeration method instead of an absorption fridge that uses propane or AC. Because when you have an absorption fridge that uses propane, you can use a significant amount of propane. Whereas for us, if we run out of propane, it's not a big deal. We can just switch to a camp stove for cooking because that's the only thing we use propane for. Or if we're at a campground, we have an induction stove that we can use to cook instead. So we can actually use no propane if we run out. But if you're using an absorption fridge, it would be really difficult to have enough electricity to power your 3-way fridge using DC power.